I don't know much of the gun stuff, the munitions, but everything else, yeah, I'm familiar with all of it. Well, it's interesting, like I said, I've heard the story so many times, but as I became a pilot and became more familiar with flying, a lot of the things had a lot more meaning. Like you talk about the ceilings that they were flying under and the weather and the canyon and it just, I'm like, holy cow, you did what? He was a great example. He was a quiet, um, reserved gentleman. They say he's just a farmer from Idaho, and the more connections I think they can make to him and look up to him and appreciate what he did, I think it's an inspiration for them, and I think it's an inspiration for anybody. It was a battle in the Ashaw Valley in Vietnam, and they were trying to defend a special forces camp that was being overrun by it was about a 4-to-1 superior numbers. Big guns, 2,000 people were coming in on this camp of 400 or 500 people, um, and basically they were just strafing the ground, trying to push the enemy back into the jungle, right? Trying to protect the people that were there left in the camp. And the fourth plane that came up got shot down and got hit, and he crash landed on the little runway there. Um, they called for a helicopter to come pick him up because they saw him get out of the airplane. They were a little concerned though because they said, "Well, it'll be 20 minutes." First, it was, "Can we can't get down through the weather? Can you come up and escort him in?" And of course, if they left, they were protecting him now on the ground. Um, he gives a lot of credit to his wingmen, the other people who were flying, because they were making strafing runs, even though they were out of ammunition. They called it Winchester. But they were still down in the weeds. They said if somebody would have stuck their head up, they would have got him with the prop. It's a big old prop. They were right down in the weeds protecting him. And he decided, I just need to land on the runway and pick him up. He said a little prayer. As he said, he counseled with his Heavenly Father and thought this is the right thing to do. And so he called to ask how long the runway was. And they said, it's 3,500 feet. And he said, well, I can land in 3,000. So he came in with the headwind and put it down, and he could see he wasn't going to be able to stop. So he came back around the other way, a little bit of a tailwind, but then the smoke was blowing the other direction, so that he could put right on the end of the runway. And so he landed and rolled it out, and as it turns out, whoever said it was 3,500 feet was wrong. It was 2,500 feet. Got on the brakes, ended up going off the end of the runway, but there was nothing out there that damaged the airplane. So he turned around, came back up. He waited and waited and waited for Jump Myers to get in, to come up to the plane. Thought maybe he'd gotten hit. So he unstrapped to get out and go get him. And when he did that, he noticed that he was trying to come up the side of the plane. But the big prop was going pretty fast because he says, you don't want to pull it back to idle and have the engine quit in that situation. So he went ahead and pulled the prop back to idle, and Jump crawled up and kind of leaned over. He says, I grabbed him by the britches and pulled him down onto the floor, and we swung the canopy closed, and he says, I gave it all she got, and at the end of the runway I pulled, and bless her heart, she came off the ground. It was a year before I was born. So, if it hadn't worked out, I wouldn't be here. I was kind of the youngest in the family. I have 5 older brothers, and they were older, and I'm sure they heard the story too, but it seems like by the time I came around, I was kind of like the only child because kids were older, and so he traveled a lot with the Medal of Honor and spoke and told the story, and so they'd take me along because I was the little kid they didn't want to leave at home, and I guess maybe I wasn't in high school yet, so maybe missing school wasn't too big of a deal, and so yeah, I've heard the story hundreds of times. I flew KC-135s, refueling, I wanted to fly fighters, but I guess it just wasn't good enough. So we live near Idaho, or near Boise, a little town called Kuna, Idaho. Back in 2018, I had a chance to. I had a week's vacation. I fly for an airline, so I was able to go over there. I went by myself, and I found somebody that had a four-wheel drive, and we went up in the mountains, and I pointed on the map. I said, I want to go right here. He's like, okay. And so we went and we found the airfield. It's so surreal that this is where it all happened. I mean, I think this is even a better experience because I know this is sitting in that flight deck. That's where my dad was sitting. I mean, that's where it all happened, and it's just kind of an emotional experience because it's a real connection. It feels kind of like a pilgrimage, like we have to come back and see the airplane because, and this is the first time they've been. I've been here before, but I thought, my kids really need to have this opportunity, and they need to be able to see this airplane because it's such a big part of our family history and heritage. So I'm glad we could make it happen.
Yeah.
So glad you guys are here.
Thank you.
Kids are learning to fly, so we're talking about some of the airplane stuff on a little bit bigger, more complex airplane. They all like airplanes and they all like flying. I'm trying to teach a couple of them right now, and one of them's pretty serious about becoming an airline pilot. But yeah, we're making a little progress at it. It seems like flying for some people is a kind of a dream, kind of a distant dream, not maybe a real possibility, but my dad came home from work every day and he was a pilot, and so I thought, well, I want to be a pilot. And we had a little airplane when I was a kid growing up. By the time I really was old enough, my dad was kind of retired, so I didn't have a lot of the Air Force impact. We can do great things. We're stronger than we think we are. We're tougher than we think we are. We're more capable, and sometimes we need these stories to help lift us and promote us and encourage us to make us realize that we can do great things. And so I think this is a great opportunity for them to say, I don't have these, I'm not limited by these things. I can do great things too.